when we launched this sustainability agenda, we said that we wanted to achieve 50 billion ringgit of sustainable finance. Now we have already hit 104 billion, making sure that we walk the talk and bring the sustainability principles and values-based services and solutions to a different level that can become Maybank's differentiator.
Welcome to another edition of CO to CO. We're at the 48th floor of Maybank. And back in the day, I sat just under this floor, a little bit in front of where we are today. Joining me today is, of course, President and Group CEO, Datuk Khairul Saleh. We were just chatting as we walked around the building about when I used to sit here and Datuk Khairul Saleh used to sit where I was sitting on the other side, just diagonally opposite from where Maybank is at Bursa. So it's wonderful to be back and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, before we get into, if you like, let's do the interesting part, the icebreaker questions. Tea or coffee?
Coffee, black, no sugar. Local coffee.
Pickle or paddle?
I haven't tried any.
Oh, really? Favorite time of day?
Saturday morning, nothing to do, just downtime.
Favorite sport, since you don't pickle and paddle?
Football?
Really?
Yeah.
To watch or to play?
Well, now just to watch, used to play.
If you had a free hour in a day, what would you do?
Connect more with my kids.
Now, this is a tricky question. How would you describe your job to a 5-year-old?
I make your money work. I keep it safe for you to spend more in future.
Very good.
Yeah, makes sense, right?
Yeah, it works for me. Now, joining us today is, of course, Dr. Khairul Saleh, with over 30 years experience with financial services and capital markets, and, as I mentioned, a stint at Bursa Malaysia as Chief Financial Officer, where he led the listing of Bursa Malaysia itself on our exchange in 2005. Now, during that period of time, Dok, what trends have you observed with regards to green finance and capital markets? And how has that shaped, or these developments shaped your career?
Well, things have really moved fast in the last 10 years, I would say. I left Bursa 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So over that period, you see that green finance has become from niche product to really a mainstream focus amongst corporates. Yeah. You see that you used to only see sustainable and responsible kind of bonds, right? SRI, etc. Yep. But now it's really moving to real green bond, sustainability linked, and even now transition finance. So it's really now moving from just sustainable stuff to real climate responsible kind of purpose currently. So I think you talk about, or you asked about how this has shaped my career, right? I think it's got a lot to do with why I also came back to Maybank, because of that humanizing financial services purpose. And sustainability has got a lot to do with humanizing. And now, you're doing it as your core purpose. So that's the best part about really driving sustainability, because it's already part of Maybank purpose.
Malaysian companies need financial support to facilitate their respective climate transitions. And there's a lot of conversations. And at the same time, since the release of Bank Negara's Climate Change and Principle-Based Taxonomy, or CCP, in 2021, there's been a surge of interest in green financial products. Now, as we look back, what are your thoughts on the roadblocks, or what's hindering the progress within the market, and perhaps some ideas, the opportunities available to accelerate the progress, Dr.
Well, again, CCPT stands for Climate Change and Principle-Based Taxonomy, right? So basically, it kinds of
common language,
yeah, to get banks as mobilizers of capital to classify their portfolio into a few categories, right? In terms of if there's any significant impact to the environment, or if there is any positive impact on climate change. I think some of the challenges, I wouldn't call it roadblocks. Challenges would be, first is data. I think there is a need to get data. Of course, banks have got a lot of clients. And the issue now is how to we get standardized data, as well as not to duplicate data as well, because we can have the same client with some other banks. And if there are so many banks going after the same customer, trying to get the same data, then it may not be productive. I would put sustainability and all these things that we're doing as a journey. So it's all about trailblazing, right? It's about all pioneering, and there has been positive momentum, and it's just making sure that we coordinate, right? We coordinate at the government level, at the regulatory level, and even industry level, and of course with the clients, to make sure we progress. And indeed, I think there has been quite good progress. So now banks like us, we are already reporting sustainability report. And now Securities Commission, right, is going to ask for what they call sustainability reporting framework.
Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah. So these are all good progress. And in my view, is just making sure that we stay the course, making sure that climate impact is reduced to the minimal of that 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius, right? And based on that, how do we collectively work as a country, right, with all the stakeholders to get the end objective met?
Well, I think that's. I mean, there's a need for common language, for data to be shared, and I mean, there's always this interesting conversation that acquiring customers is expensive. And when one starts sharing data, it's a little bit tricky.
Yeah. So that's why we have a regulator in the middle, right? Regulator is meant to be the one that hopefully use the data wisely for the benefit of progressing the sustainability agenda.
Now, climate change, and we were talking about leadership, and clearly Maybank has been a leader. The same year that Bank Negara released CCPT, Maybank announced its commitment to achieving carbon neutrality of its own emissions by 2030 and net zero carbon equivalent position by 2050. Can you share with our viewers what is Maybank's approach and strategy towards decarbonising your portfolio?
We started sustainability journey even from 2010, but at that time it's very much a corporate responsibility agenda. But over the years, we appreciate the need to be a bit more holistic and ambitious as far as ESG is concerned. So that's why we're really looking at the E and the S and the G, environment, social, and governance. Now, we actually started back in earnest probably in 2021, where we say that if we want to do this, we must again have the data. So then back in 2022, we first got what we call the Scope 3 finance emission baseline, so that we know this is what our portfolio is emitting and which sectors are the biggest emitters. So that's a bit more structured, it's science-based. So, and then from there, we also say that, we also need to guide our people, right? Because we want to avoid greenwashing. We want to make sure that we do the right thing. So we came up with a few frameworks. One is the sustainability or sustainable product framework, where then we define for our people what can fall as sustainable finance, right? Because that's important. Over time, we realized that, we have to do more than just sustainable product framework. We really need to help people transition. People are not born green, right? Many people are now brown, but you need to make them green. That means that within that sustainable product framework, you need to articulate better on transition finance framework, because basically to help people. Within that context, we even had discussions where internally, right, the easiest way is don't do business. or drop these companies. Don't lend, right? Because that's the best way to decarbonize, maybe. But that's not us, right? We are here to help companies. We are here to help our customers. So we then take charge of the agenda of how can we help our customers by engaging with them, by collaborating with them, not by de-investing in them. And that's why we're doing transition finance. Yeah. So we then, and these are all journeys, right? So we started off again with what we call NDPE. And over time, we were quite prescriptive, right? Because even we said no coal, right? But then we realized that if we don't do coal as part of transition, current coal power plants will not be able to get assistance before they transition. And hence, that's why we call no new coal, right? We can still finance current coal because we need to help them, maybe even accelerate the decommissioning of the current power plant before they get into a new renewable power plant. But in essence, right, what we're trying to do is across three key pillars. One is to be, and we really put it as part of the leadership agenda on sustainability. We put it as part of our DNA. The first pillar is about leadership in business, right? We do this, also as part of business. And of course, the second part is about leadership in thoughts. Thoughts cover a few things. One is about awareness, right? We need to make this agenda aware amongst not just our customers, but the whole community. We have started, organizing events, for example. Right? The recent one was with IIF. Yeah, we branded it with them because we know that they're credible in this space. The third pillar is about walking the talk and building capability, right? Because we know that we can't do this as part of our strategy if we don't have people who understand it, right? So we have established a dedicated accessibility office. And this is what we call COE here, but we also have it in the various countries that are present. We have started certifying our people, in different categories. The experts, we call them black belt in sustainability, and of course, the ones that know at least the basics, we call them white belt. Then we started building capability within the business. So, for example, we have got a team of people that provides solutions on sustainability to our customers, right? So that they can speak the same language with the customer, they can educate the customer, in addition to being able to provide products. We started a few years ago in coming up with what we call tear sheet on research, right, on sustainability. Yeah, so on and on, so on and so on, so on. So it's quite key that we make sure that sustainability is part of our business strategy, and focusing on these three key pillars of business leadership, thought leadership, and again, walking the talk. Yeah.
I think there's a key theme, and I think you're far too humble. Maybank's being responsible, and that's responsible leadership. And I think from an exchange perspective, this is something we stress a lot, Dato', that we look for leadership, because Maybank is the largest bank in Malaysia, and by assets in particular, and that means it's a fabric, a pillar. And I think it's key as we start looking at just transition, and you were touching on these points, is that we leave no one behind. Because to be quite frank, viewers, if Maybank chose not to fund, magically carbon doesn't disappear.
Yeah.
They will just have funding from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So by being responsible and constructively engaging customers and removing what I call removing the objection, we begin to move and making transition financing real. And it gets back to that central theme, those three key pillars, and it's being responsible. And again, congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Building on that, how does a lot of conversation, you did touch on stranded assets and power plants. How do we remove the objection from owners to, if you like, accelerate decommissioning, just not specifically Maybank customers, just general thoughts from a financing perspective, because it's a challenge. Malaysia in particular has young plants which have some time to go. Bonds have been subscribed to. So you just can't simply decommission, because when these plants started, they were viable. But we now need to look at building, if you like, a better mousetrap to move and ease our way, and maybe the transition fuel or so on. Thoughts?
I think it has to tie with the renewable agenda, right? Decommission will not happen on itself by itself. It has to be coupled with also the ability to have an investment case together with renewable and transition as well. It is a conversation, surely, right? Because as you said, many power plants, particularly in this part of the region, are fairly young. So how do we do that, right? So, but I guess maybe we also need to have a practical approach. Yeah. End of the day, energy is a security for a particular country, right? And how do we make sure that the supply of energy will continue, as part of that security? And within that, maybe plan properly, right? For example, we know in the next 10 years, about 8.5 gig of coal power will be decommissioned if nothing is being done. We also know that maybe now only about 3 gig of renewable energy has been approved to be put in place. So if nothing is being done beyond that, immediately there'll be a 5 gig deficit in energy. As a country, are we prepared to have that? And then we also know that from grid investment, even a grid investment, green grid, it also costs a lot of money, right? So all these things, in my view, need to put together. It is important, in my view, that supply and demand discussion is being had at the country level, involving all the stakeholders, not just banks, the producers, the government, regulators, etc., right? To chart out a proper roadmap with the ability to have clarity on that continuous energy supply, increasing demand, etc., right? And how do we then transition? It's not just as if, tomorrow we switch off, right, and everything is green and country is secure, etc., right? We also need to think about all this, a lot of moving parts together.
I think that's a lovely segue into perhaps the next thought. We have ambition, we want green loans, and in the financial sector blueprint 2022 to 2026, Bank Negara set a target for at least 50% new financing by banks to be aligned with climate supporting of transitional activities. How do you operationalize it, Dato'? I mean, because we're in the business of doing business. We want to do good business, responsible business.
Yeah.
So does from a Maybank perspective, do you set a target, or you have your principle base, and when you get it right, you get the right outcome?
You are spot on, right? It's about doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And doing the right thing is, making sure that we stick to our purpose, right?
Yep.
And do responsible finance, and the product will potentially be achieving that set of numbers. And when you talk about responsible finance, we have got situations where, we've got this, what we call the Executive ESCO Sustainable Committee, or Sustainability Committee, right? And one of the jobs of this ESC, in short, is to become the arbitrator. Right?
The challenge session.
We've got business who wants to do certain things, and we got sustainability group who keeps us conscious clear, right, in terms of doing the right thing. And in a few cases, we have already seen where we are prepared not to do certain things because it is not the right thing. So it's easy to say, let's do this thing, and then we claw back on our principles, etc., because we want to achieve the numbers, right? But again, that's not the right thing. Having said that, I think so far the traction, at least for Maybank, has been good. So like we have got this under CCPT classification of C1 to C5, right, in terms of the impact and significance. If our portfolio is cut into C1 to C3 primarily, we are okay. The worst is C5. But so far, we are almost 80% between C1 and C3. So we are getting there, right? We are doing the right thing. We're moving in the right direction. But to your point, I think we probably have to stick to doing the right thing and making sure that we stick to our principles, we stick to our core of really the end game of sustainability.
So would it be fair to, I mean, from a Maybank perspective, there isn't a target for green loans. We're applying a principle, and as we apply that principle, it just so happens by doing the right thing, we get to where we need to be.
Yeah. We do have a target, right? When we launched this sustainability agenda back in 2021, we said that we wanted to achieve 50 billion ringgit of sustainable finance. And then we changed it to 80 billion.
Which I remember, which you also got.
Yeah,
very quickly.
Now we have already hit 104 billion. Yeah. To share you some insight, right? And then we discussed at the board, right? Are we chasing numbers? Yes, it's my KPI, it's senior management's KPI. But, I think more importantly is again to get the things right? To get the core of helping people to decarbonize.
I remember you sharing that. Yeah. That's why I asked the question, because you're hitting your figures, but maybe you don't have, you're surpassing your figures, right?
Yeah. So this is where sometimes standardization of information is key, right?
Yes.
So, okay, I say that I've hit 100 billion. Some other banks say they've hit 200 billion. What we also say is that we want our figures to be verified by third party. Yes, we are doing all these things, but we are not just doing it, for the sake of achieving numbers. We make sure that we don't hit greenwashing. We get an external party to validate our numbers. So in that sense, we are even stricter than many parties. So that's one, right? Secondly is that I did tell you already that, important thing is to make sure that we stick to our framework, we stick to the core of helping customers in this journey. Now, in this journey, again, we are also learning, as I said, right? And I mentioned to you that we have got this baseline emission number. Now, what do we do with it, right? So we are going to the next step of looking at a midterm net zero pathway. So from those key sectors that are emitting high carbon or quantity, we say that we must then find a way to go towards net zero. And what do we do in terms of providing financing for them to get better technology to do things, etc., etc. So again, linking back to the point about collaborating and engaging with our clients and not running away from them, which is the easy way to do. Yeah? And we take that role very seriously in terms of doing the right thing for our customers responsibly.
I think there's a very interesting piece, with your indulgence, where we start looking at SMEs and MSMEs. And not because one of the pieces we've been looking at the exchange as we move into the new reporting world of S1 and S2, and Scope 1, Scope 2 and Scope 3, is MSMEs and SMEs are vital parts of supply chains. And if you're an SME, and my engagement with SME is, well, you're an owner operator, you could be quite large, but you're generally resource strapped. And it becomes not an imposition, but there's one more thing you need to do when you're thinking cash flow, etc. No, I appreciate the initiative around Summer Local supporting. So we have the role of, if you like, the consumer or the customer for the SMEs, and then also the bank who is funding. How do you see those coming together, and how can all our larger responsible PLCs help our supply chains actually move along? And as a bank, it's a little slightly more complicated because you're actually funding them as well.
Yeah, so we know that we can't get to net zero without getting the SMEs to also be net zero because of Scope 3. yes, we are financing quite this bit of these people. We've got some are local, bringing the consumer and the business. We have also now started accelerating the not just awareness but also assistance for the SMEs. So we just put up what we call SME My Impact Hub with the objective of providing assistance to the SME, at least in terms of understanding why they need to do this, what are the benefits, etc. Now, if you ask me, the key thing is to be able to then see as banks or even PLCs, how can we support the national agenda, right? So take, for example, NIMP. Right? This is a National Industrial Master Plan, right? They talk about uplifting SMEs, particularly in the semiconductor sector. So what we're trying to do more, or definitely better, is to see how we can at least focus a bit on this particular sector. And not just about the awareness, but also the whole thing, the financing as well, right? Because these are the companies that will need to integrate to the global supply chain, right? And global supply chain means scope 3. So what I'm trying to say is that I think we need to start linking to the country's agenda, the various plans, and focus and prioritize. Because SME is huge. And that's what we're trying to do, to help the SMEs in the first place. But generally, we are already having this, what we call a portal called My Impact SME Hub, to start from the awareness to the assistance and potentially financing towards net zero.
That's great. No, I think as we will have our glide path for NDC defined with initiatives such as the portal that will assist SMEs on that journey. Now, Maybank is a universal bank, and I'm a Maybank customer for many years, in fact. How can Maybank Dato help me go green?
We've got a few products.
I know.
Have we got our credit card, My Impact credit card? Of course, we've got EV financing. We are already now about, having about 30% of the market share on EV financing, green mortgage financing, solar financing, right? So these are all the initiatives we are doing to help our customers to go towards green. Now, we're also trying to go a step further, right? And that's where our things like our My Impact credit card comes in, because why we call My Impact in the first place, right? This concept of linking sustainability principles with values-based principles and being inspired by Islamic finance. So maybe people need to be a bit more aware on this My Impact card, but the two features on both sustainability and values-based, one is there is no penalty charges, there's no compounding interest, because it is inspired by Islamic finance from a values point of view. And this is given to not just customers who are customers of our Islamic banking, but also customers of even conventional bank. Now, on the sustainability part, right, we say that you can actually track your carbon footprint whenever you use that card, wherever you use that card. Yeah. And the beauty of this is we go even further. You can actually offset this carbon footprint by donating to a certain entities that can help you offset. So what we are trying to do is not just get products out for the consumers, but maybe make them also contribute and be aware about the bigger costs. Yeah. So hopefully we will roll out other products as well, not just cards, maybe hire purchase, mortgage, along this line.
Companies are relatively simple beasts. We're artificial construct, of course. If it makes profit, we do more of it, and if it doesn't make profit, we'll do less of it. And that gets exactly to what Dato was talking about with the My Impact card. By raising awareness, we make consumers actually train or make companies behave better. Yeah. Because it's showing that it has an impact and it is important. And I think that's the role of the consumer is often overlooked. And I think that it's exciting. Now, moving back, so you were a part of the team that coined the term humanizing financial services back in the day. What's top of your agenda for the bank when it comes to sustainability?
I mentioned to you earlier, we really want to make this as our organization's purpose, right? Sustainability, and then it's the DNA, it's the strategy. And I mentioned to you about the 3 pillars. Yeah. So we even have reframed our purpose statement, yeah, along the line that Maybank is a values-based platform, and that values basically define everything on sustainability. I always tell my guys, enough of the framework, enough of the, the theory part of it, right? Now it's make sure that we go out there and we prove that we can do scope 1, scope 2, and even scope 3. And scope 3, of course, by helping our customers. So basically walking the talk and helping our clients. We need to do more of that. Now, on a different scale, I mentioned to you about my impact. And this is where we want to come to a convergence between the sustainability principles and the Islamic finance values. Because we see that, say, our portfolio in Malaysia, right? Really almost 70% of our portfolio in Malaysia is already Islamic. Mm-hmm. At the group level, it's already about 45%. And when we study the principles of Islamic finance, they are very much aligned with sustainability. So we think that being a leader in Islamic banking and finance, not just in Malaysia but in the region, and also a leader in the sustainability principles, if we combine these two, we think that we can have a solid differentiator, yeah, in pushing values-based services and solutions, yeah, not just in Malaysia, across the region as well. So how can we, inspire our people? How can we educate our customers, right? Let's do this because we are, a leader in both Islamic finance as well as sustainability. So the principles are very much aligned. So if you ask me about what we are going to do next, it's about hitting the road, helping our clients, making sure that we walk the talk and bring the sustainability principles and values-based services and solutions to a different level that can become Maybank's differentiator.
Clearly, it's all about walking the talk, if I may, yeah, and being premised on or being guided by purpose. Now, any last thoughts? That was a very powerful last piece. Any last thoughts you'd like to share with our viewers?
We put sustainability as a core agenda. It's already our purpose, right? Walking the talk. The proof is in the pudding. Yeah. We'll just make sure that we move along, stay the course, right? It's a journey, so we will make adjustments along the way. But the key thing is, it is not a journey that we can do alone, right? Sustainability is not just a financial institution's responsibility. Sustainability has to bring along everyone that is involved in the value chain, from the government to the agencies to the regulator to financial institutions to the players, right? There is this common saying, right? It's a whole of the nation concept or principle that we need to push along. Yeah. So, and Maybank, yeah, is committed to be a key player in that whole chain of sustainability journey.
That's it. Thank you for your time today. Insightful. It sets the purpose and, more importantly, explains what needs to be done by all of us. Because as you quite rightly said, it's an all-of-nation response. It is not up to any one party, but all of us working together to make the difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.